What up, everybody? Scuff D here, and today we're going to be talking about Amendera Kendel, one of the warlords of the Sisters of Silence. I've been having a lot of fun with her. She's actually the rare warlord. Love the artwork. Uh, the Sisters of Silence are pretty fun, pretty potent. A lot of people are playing Janisha Kroll at the top 50. She's strong too. Played a lot of stuff before I had all the cards, but now when it comes to the cards, I think I've got just about all of the Sisters of Silence stuff. I do. I'm missing one extra copy, I think, of White Tigers, but I'm not going to play White Tigers. Not in this deck, and probably not in a couple of the other decks, but maybe with the fourth Warlord we shall see. However, been playing Amendera Kendel, and she's really fun. So she's got interesting stuff going on with her. First off, she does have high initiative. That's very important to note. Comes in very handy because she's only got one attack out the gate. You kind of want to go first with her. If you don't, then you're going to be hurting. You're going to be hurting. Because what you need with her is you get her special ability or her special card, her Greater Destiny, which is cool. Usually this is your first turn play. I think maybe only once I haven't played this first turn, and I kind of regretted it. So typically this is your first turn play. You give her +1 attack, so that brings her up to the standard 2 attack, but then it gives her +3 health as well, and that goes back into your deck. And you can play that multiple times through the course of a game. An important thing to note with Greater Destiny is it caps out at 10 energy. So in the event, I mean, that's a stretch of a game, but let's say you're playing a long game and you get to deck out. Greater Destiny continues to go back into your deck. It costs 10 energy. It comes back up. So it will continuously raise your attack and give you +3 health, and you can play that every turn as long as you don't overdraw. However, if Greater Destiny gets drawn up and you've got a full hand already, you'll lose that card. Now, I think there's probably only one or two reasons why you'd want to play it at 10 energy repeatedly to stall out the game, but that's really not the purpose of the deck. The purpose of the deck is using Kendall's ability as a kind of a toolbox, because the Sisters of Silence are very flexible. They've all got different roles that they play, and depending on the troops that you've got in your deck, they do different things. Some have got rally effects that deal damage. Some have got rally effects that destroy. Some have got flank. Some have got assist abilities, whether it's for your warlord or for your other troops. They all do something. So for her having that ability to pay 2 energy, choose one of the infantry from your deck and draw it. It's kind of as a toolbox card. Is very helpful because when you are facing your opponent, you know who you're playing, you know what cards you can expect from them. That can help tailor your choices. For instance, if you're playing against an aggro, maybe you want to have yourself a little extra attack and some sneak attack on there, or you want the option for healing with Iba Naroda. You're going to get to 6 energy and then rely on her to get you a few more cards. Maybe you're playing against a vehicle deck, in which case then the Silver Osprey are very, very handy, or Titan. So that's the start of it. That's the base of it. I want to show you a couple games. Take a look at the deck itself, talk about the cards that I've got chosen in there, and we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and break it down. Okay, so this is one of the earlier games I think I had when I was still missing a couple legendaries. I don't think I had the board clear, the Great Tithe on the deck. And I don't think I still haven't added Raptor Guard. Raptor Guard is a nice legendary, but for her, Kendel is very combo based. I don't think Raptor Guard is going to be beneficial to her. So Steel Talon Hawk, this is a great card to answer early plays like a Kaiser Lane or a Malkiel, Lord Malkiel. You don't want to use it in those, unless those instances you have to. And this is an obvious, easy reason to use it. You can use it for anti-stealth if you want to. I usually like to use Cleansing Flame and Prosecutor Mistress as well for those games. But right now, the first couple of turns, we're just gonna give ourselves some troop options. We're gonna see what he's playing. He's bastioning up. He's going to use his ability, or is he going to attack? He's going to use his ability, so we're not in the mood to do some exchanges on there yet. which is fine. We can get some troops on the board. And as you see here, I've got Secretary Axiarch. These guys are really nice because they give infantry troops +1/+0. All of your Sisters of Silence cards are infantry that you're going to be using in the deck, but also he's got that survivor, so he really kind of forces action from your opponent. He's a good way to stick on the table. He's not a Sisters of Silence troop though, so there is that. There is that. Right now we've got some options we want to keep with the Fist especially. That's what we're keeping Cleansing Flame for, so we won't have to worry about his turrets necessarily. Just be able to clear those out just fine, and then still follow up, maybe even with another troop if we want to clear it out. I don't think we're going to. I think we're just going to leave this be, deal the damage. I'm going to leave that front line on the board. Yeah, Euphemia King is kind of, I don't want to say the finisher, but that's really the basis of Kendel's deck. Her end game plan is to play King 2 to 3 times a game, and it's actually really easy to do most instances. Now, against enemies like the Imperial Fists, who can continuously spit out a lot of troops, that becomes harder to do. So really, you're building up for that more as a finishing effect than anything else. But I do want to use like some abilities, with some troops, lower down some Bastion, and then just kind of leave him at mercy with 1 health on that troop to, basically he's going to have to throw it into something here. The Cull, I don't think we have to talk about how necessary or how helpful the Cull is. It's awesome. The card is great. In this game here, I don't know if I hold on to it later, if I've got a second one that I use. For earlier on, I only had 1 copy of the Cull before I picked another one up. But when you're playing against board decks, Defenders of Caliban, Imperial Fists, even Death Guard to some extent, the Cull can swing games so huge. You know, that you go from having a full board of low health troops, even against another Sisters of Silence player, to wiping their board, getting enough energy, as well as dropping other troops on the board. So it is a great card to have, and it's kind of a combo game ender in a way. I mean, if you've got the right pieces in your hand already. We've got White Falcons. We're going to be able to use that. And we're going to... The Varantine Armor, I still use this. It's one of those cards, it's a fringe card. I may not keep it, but I use it because that Battle Honor Healing 2, for Kendel, who has a lot of ways to get health, whether it's from Iba Neruda, from the Battle Honor, or from her own special card, that sometimes makes the game. A lot of times, actually, it makes the game. So, yeah. I don't regret keeping. I think when I first built the deck, I had 2 copies, and I found that was just too much. There was no reason for me to be using Battle Honor Heal 4, because typically what I do is I want to use her ability to draw key cards later in the game. When I've got Euphemia King in here 2 or 3 times, I play King, I use her ability, I draw King back up, I use King again. That's really the way to play it. Because she's fishing specifically for that Sister's card. So it's like, okay, I know I've got a Sister's card in there. I can get King. I can play King again. But in this instance, when we're facing a bunch of troop warlords, we really need to press the advantage. And that right there is probably a mistake on his end, or he's really hoping that I don't have the Cull. Even if he had a Stalwart Mastery, I'd have the Cull. I had Psychic Anathema. This is an early draft of the deck. Before I had the Great Tithe. So if you don't have Great Tithe, Psychic Anathema works almost as well. It eliminates frontline, it stuns everything, and it buys you the turn that you need. But once you get the option of board clear, I find that works a lot better. And at this point, we're just turning the health to our advantage. Even if he throws down 2 Stalwart Defenders, I can stun and jam them. So we're going to be able to take him out just fine. And leaving himself exposed like that with no other troops just gives me more reason. Instead of using attacking him, I can just use I can just use the armor. I guess I think I'm showboating here at this point. Yeah, king is where we're going to go at, and just throw king out with the Secutaries that basically become a 7 energy. And that's one reason why I kept Secutaria in here, because they have survivor, so the odds of them sticking, even if I just put them out there that first turn, my opponent has to either deal with them or they can't finish them off, and then the next turn I can play king. It works really nice. So let's take a look at how I've got the deck right now. After I got all the cards, there's some changes that I made in here. Obviously, I put in Great Tithe. I added Crucial Choice to the deck, which I think at this point, if you have Crucial Choice, you might as well play it until they change it. And they may or may not change it. This just makes games very interesting. It makes games very interesting because you don't know what you're going to get. Sometimes you get junk, sometimes you don't. But it's there. I'm not going to say much more about that. Steel Talon Hawk. Having 2 of those is nice. If you don't have a Steel Talon Hawk, you may want to consider Seek and Destroy or something like that. Just some other damage dealing tactic. Command Bridge. Great Tithe. Command Bridge, usually what I go for Command Bridge typically is I will go for I just missed it. The Coal. That's going to be my go-to to have in the pocket, but also I can go with Cleansing Flame or Execution Blade. Execution Blade doesn't play place every game, but sometimes it does. And then really the toolbox troops. We've got Steel Foxes, which stun and stun enemies that they damage. Now, damage is important. If the enemy warlord has got shield or bastion, Steel Foxes doesn't work. Melgator for bouncing. This works really good for bouncing your own troops because almost all of these troops are attack 4 or lower. So it feels like it's just a natural fit. And then we've got the Ice Serpents, which are very important against super aggressive decks, especially now with the Khorne's favored Khorne's Chosen. Being able to stall an opponent at that 6 energy mark, saying you can't attack, sorry, hold off on your combo, or attack a warlord who, like Lehman Russ, who can attack multiple times. Garrow, throwing down an Angron, even this just as just a standard Angron stall, Ice Serpents are very useful. And as a toolbox warlord who can go pull them, you can see you've got an Ice Serpents to choose from, a Silver Osprey, and a White Falcon. And depending on the game that you're facing, you can say, I want the Serpents. I want the Asps. I want the Steel Foxes. So you've got a couple different cards there just alone that deal with aggro. You've got the Stunning and then the Giving Can't Attack. Prosecuted Mistress, I don't ever feel bad about dealing 1 damage to all enemies. Also, late game, there's a lot of ways between Prosecuted Mistress and Cleansing Flame to help set up the Cull. And there are times where I will attack a troop that I know I can't kill, or I'll let a troop live that I could kill because I expect my opponent to attack with it on their turn, and that will bring it to 3 health, which means I can cull for added benefit. Raven's Claw, these are kind of just, these feel like an auto include, especially if you manage to get Execution Blade and you play her Greater Destiny 2 or 3 times in a game. Raven's Claw can give you a sneaking attack warlord for 5, which is nice. Silver Osprey, again, these are just basically almost built-in crack grenades, which are fantastic. Varantine Armor, I enjoy it. It's on the list of like maybe I would reconsider this card, but in some games this comes in very, very handy. White Falcons, solid flanking unit. White Asps, just as a one-of, because the deck itself doesn't have any single hard removal, but just having one of these in the pocket makes a big difference. Obviously, Ebon Neruda, and then the Great Tithe. Now, I will acquiesce that this is a kind of legendary heavy deck, right? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 legendaries in the deck. Some of those you could do without, but the 2 that you definitely want to have in your deck, if I had to say anything, would be Ebon Neruda and Euphemia King. If you don't have Kai, Crucial Choice, Execution Blade, Great Tithe, you can you can put other options in your deck, but Euphemia King and Ebba Neruda are definitely the two that you are going to want to have, because those combo together. They combo with Kendall's ability, and they give her health and high damage output, which is what she needs. So let's take a look at a couple more games as the deck has evolved, and then we'll take a look and I'll kind of explain some of the weak areas of the deck and other cards that you might want to consider if you don't have all those cards. Right, so we're going to square off against a Conrad Kurz in this game here. And just as a heads up, Conrad Kurz isn't in the greatest spot right now, just because of the way his pacing is, the Night Lords cards themselves. But if he hits that 10 energy and he gets Apotheosis and all his cards working, he can still do some damage. So there's a speed involved in there. And if he goes first before Kendall gets to play her Greater Destiny, he gets a free damage on her with his ability if he really wants to. So you are at a disadvantage, but you gotta just attack hard. I think I've only lost to one Kurz with Kendall in the time that I've been playing her, and I played several. Every game is a little different in the early start, but the late game always ends the same. There's just some cards that you want to keep on tap. You want to have those Steel Foxes. You want to have those Ice Serpents. Locking him in place, can't attack, doesn't matter. You break his stealth, you give him can't attack, he's a sitting duck, essentially. And sometimes you get to him well before he even gets to the 10 energy mark. It just depends on if you get all your cards out. And throwing the cards out as quickly as possible. So with this deck here, I think we've got like his height, his 4 attack Unstoppables. Those are always do a lot of damage. Another card that can be frustrating is when he throws down the Reapers of Kaldrak, giving you can't attack. Although the nice thing about Reapers of Kaldrak is they're almost 100% susceptible to the built-in crack grenades, not the Ice Serpents, but the built-in crack grenades. I don't like using an Ice Serpent early, but I want to put a body down on the board, follow it up with Euphemia King, and then use my ability a second time. If he doesn't play a troop, he's going to take 6 damage. And that looks like that's where we're going to go. Yeah, why even use my ability when I can just do 7 plus 4? So that's what we're going to do here. And this is just where the damage output for the support troops comes from. Now, it's super important to note, if you're going to play King, you have to remember, don't play King until your opponent has no troops. So if you play King and there's a troop on the board and you're going to get rid of it, the opportunity has passed. You're going to have to suffer the consequences. However, in some games, I have played King knowing that it's going to not gain fast just to force my opponent to deal with it, because it has backlash go back into my deck. So unless they jam it, it's still going back into my deck for me to draw again. I always play, if I have King and I have Ebba Neruda, I like to play King first so it goes back into my deck, and then play Neruda to increase the chances of drawing it again. It's really important to note with her that she's drawing and you're gaining healing for the Sisters of Silence troops, and there are some troops I have in this deck that are not Sisters of Silence. I've got a decent amount of tactics, and if I use Kendall's ability too much in the course of a game, I'm thinning the pool that will offer me. And this game is pretty much wrapped up with the Cleansing Flames here. Good game. I'm thinning the pool by already taking more sisters out. So if you play Ebba Neruda late game and you've used your ability 2 or 3 times, you can still gain health, but you've decreased the chances of you gaining health. This is probably, I wouldn't say one of the faster cruises, but this is definitely one of the faster cruises. Kurz games I played. Most of them can go to 9 energy. I've had a couple go to 10, and that's where it gets a little tricky. But having those options, and especially if they go to Night Hunter mode and they're running solo, you lock them down, and then you throw Euphemia King at them 2 or 3 times. Yeah, that'll win the game. I think because we don't see enough Lionel Johnson, we'll take a look at this game here. Some Dark Angels. I think this is probably a decent matchup in terms of what it could be, depending on how the Dark Angels player builds their deck, because they have a lot of front line and they've got a lot of Astartes that have got a lot of troops, that have got a lot of options. So long as he's getting those troops on the board, outliving my troops, then I'm not I'm at a disadvantage with my end game option, because really with this deck the end game option is either stay alive and increase your health through the course of Greater Destiny, and potentially the Executioner Blade, but also the second option is hit hard with King and your Warlord if your Warlord has increased tact. If you get extra tactics from Crucial Choice or Kaiser Lane, that's great. If you need to deal damage from the rally effects of your sisters, that will do. If you need to. I'm going to take a second. Escape from hell. Escape inescapable cell. Yeah, escape from hell. It's appropriate. I think that's fair. So yeah, I mean, you can do damage that way. Sometimes just hit 2, and then with your Warlord 2 or 3. It's an option. It's something to consider. I'm actually almost willing to put him back into his hand, even though that'll be rally deal damage to me. I'm going to put the Asps into my hand because we're getting into that point here, especially with the Dark Angels as they are, where he's going to have high attack troops. So having an Asp in the pocket is more helpful, especially when you've got a full hand. Pulling an Ibn Neruda into a full hand, she could risk you overdrawing, and that's not something you want. So just keep that in mind. And this is one of those times where you play Greater Destiny. I may not play it the third time. I might, but at the very least, it's going to do some hurt. I know he's got 2 Deathwing up in his hand, one of which is going to have a rally effect to take care of my troops. He's increased his Dreadwing, which I find was very interesting. Not sure what quest he picked here, but I don't want to risk the chances of it, so I'm just going to do what I can to thwart that. I've got the Battle Owner, I've got an Attack 3, which is nice because I take less damage from dealing with a troop like Peligore, and I still keep a pretty decent threat on the board. And Secretary Axiarch coming in handy as needed. Or we can just go that way. Keep the Secretary for some Steel Foxes and an Euphemia King. Now, in the mirror match, what's important to note, or what's good to keep in mind, is if you put the Secretary out and you've got 4 attack troops that increase their attack to 5, you become susceptible to the flankers, giving your fellow sisters, a silent player, a sneak attack flanker. So you do want to keep that in mind. That'll work nicely. And I think we keep Cleansing Flame here because I figure regardless of whatever he does to the rest of my troops or my Warlord, he's going to have 3 health here. He's going to probably play a troop that I could get to 2 health, where that'll do the extra damage that I want it to. Just right here, just having 2 Steel Foxes and the Axiarch alone is, 6 damage plus my Warlord, which is 4, so that's 10 damage right there. I've got 10 damage finishing in my hand. I can follow that up with an extra 2, so that's 11 damage right there. And this is a 30 health Warlord. I mean, keep this in mind. This is not, uber powerful sister cards making her crazy. She's not counting down a Reckoning. She's got low health. She doesn't start with an extra card. She has high initiative. But really what it is just having the toolbox answers with her ability to know, this is what I need this game. And the Greater Destiny certainly helps. Don't get me wrong. That certainly helps. But there are some times where late game it comes in your hand, it's for 6 energy. You're like, yeah, maybe I don't want to play it. Maybe that's questionable. And we'll save that up. We've got lethal the next turn. Because even if he throws down 2 front lines, we've got the anathema. Or if this was the Great Tithe, you could worry about clearing out the board and dealing damage that way too. So, looking pretty good. And that's, we started with 30, we end with 30. Yeah, so those games are fun. She plays really well. Kendel plays really well. Her weak areas, if I had to say she's got weak areas, the aggressive warlords give you really a push for your money. You've got to be on point the entire game. When I say aggressive, I mean any of those warlords that come out swinging hard and fast. Kabanda, Karn, Angron, Russ. They're entirely beatable. They're entirely, I mean, those are good games, but they're very tight games. You only get the chance to use your ability maybe once or twice, so you've got to make the most of it count. You got to pick the right troops for the right certain situations. You know, if you get a bad draw, you pull up, say, use your ability and you get a Silver Osprey, a White Falcon, and a White Asp against an Angron player. 2 of those aren't going to do you as much good as the other one. So, and the other one is not going to do you great, but it's better than nothing. And if you're playing against another, like a Karn, where the game could be over 2-3 combats, 2-3 turns, you don't attack with her. You use that time to use your ability to look for the healing, if necessary. The health really comes down to sometimes just having a Steel Fox hit off and stun him, buy you a turn, or lock him down with an Ice Serpents. Those games are tricky. That's just the best way to put it. Those are really your hard games, because the window is shorter. So as the window gets shorter in terms of how many turns it takes to finish the game, the options that she normally has to combo, whether it's with troops, whether it's with, Secretary Axiarch and Euphemia King, or Euphemia King and then using her ability, you have less chances and times to do those things. You have less opportunity to combo. So that is why those smaller, lower cost pieces are so important. Got a lot of 2 and 3 cost cards. This is something I think a lot of decks need to keep in mind when they're looking to combo or they're looking for options. If you have got a higher end curve, you're not going to have a lot of combo options. That's not the point of your deck. And if you're comboing, what is your ideal energy? I think for her, Kendel, 6 energy. She can get 2 to 3 pieces on the board or played. If she's got the coal, you could play it, although typically the coal actually gets stronger later game if you play it at like 8 to 10 energy. Yeah, you gotta go for the most to get her health. Now, as I said, if you don't have some of these cards, there are some other cards to consider. And I've had a couple in my deck that I've tweaked out or changed a couple times. So if you don't have like some of the legendaries or some of the epics, some of the other good cards that you could use, I've seen people use Winter Crows. You could use Winter Crows in place of a Steel Fox. It's a little iffy. It's only going to be on an enemy troop. It's not going to be on a warlord, and sometimes that's really the big difference. You could use Secret Cadre if you don't have the, I know it's another epic, but if you don't have a Steel Talon Hawk, or you've only got 1 Steel Talon Hawk, Secret Cadre is not bad. They're okay. They're not fantastic. You could think about using Fanatic Discipline if you've got a lot of sisters and you go more sister troops and less tactics, because this card here is very powerful as a finisher. So if you don't have Euphemia King, but you still can find a way to get 2 or 3 sisters on the board, Fanatic Discipline can do a lot of damage to end the game. And then I would probably say, as I said before, Psychic Anathema compared to the Great Tithe. That's a wonderful swap. That's a good card to have. Excrucious Cadre as a stealth and precog removal is not bad. They're high cost. If you feel the need that you need a high cost finisher, that's a good card to consider. But then you want to think about some other cards. You want to think about healing. You want to think about options that way. You could go with Ekratrez. Manifest Destiny is very nice. Doombringer is an option, although it's a high cost card, and again, you want to take a look at like how many ways are you planning on finishing. Another big card, this is new to the game, Strategic Reserves. Draw 2 infantry troop from your deck and give them +1/+1. Well, all of her troops in this deck are infantry. All of them. And if they're Solar Auxilia, they're going to lower the cost by 1. None of them are Solar Auxilia, but you're going to get your Sisters of Silence at +1/+1. Now, the downside to that is maybe you end up drawing, you end up drawing Melgator and I wouldn't be necessarily a terrible thing to get Exiarch, for as a 3/3, but a Kaiserlane. Or maybe you get one of your Sisters of Silence, but now they're over attack 4, which makes them susceptible to a mirror match, White Falcons. Things to consider. It's not a bad option, but I prefer to keep it out of this deck. I think that card is a very great deck for Janisha Kroll, maybe even the Veronica Soloth, or as I like to call her, Veruca Salt, because this ability gives me the choice of just the one that I need. But I'll be fair, for 1 energy more, you get 2 guaranteed troops, and you're giving them +1/+1, so that is not a bad call. That's not a bad tactic to consider. If you feel like you need card draw in your deck, Strategic Reserve is a very good card for that. You could throw in an Orders from Terra, although the focus of this is not to have Kendel do the attacking every turn, just attack when she needs to. And I would maybe recommend or think about recommending something to give yourself some frontline if you don't have some of these like lockdown cards like Ice Serpents and the Steel Foxes. Maybe either Ornithos Barge or even just the Sisters of Silence frontline troops, which I think they just have the 1 or 2 of. Do they have 2? Knight Centura is really good for what you pay for. I think that's the only frontline that they've got, although Frozen Heart will put a Knight Centura into play. Yeah. So, I don't know. That's what I would go off of if I were to offer some suggestions. Maybe a Defensive Satellites if you don't have the Cull. If you don't have the Cull, you got to find some other way to get some widespread damage in there. And that's why cards like the Cleansing Flame are still very useful. Maybe Cleansing Flame with an Informant Network to help deal with stealth. There's ways to go about it. There's ways to consider cards, throwing them in there that are going to work well. Because you're playing infantry, look at the cards that support infantry. Look at the cards like Strategic Reserves that works well with infantry. Maybe consider, I don't have it here, but the Defiant Stand, giving one of your Sisters of Silence a frontline for 1 energy. Just some options to consider. So that is my Amendera Kendel deck. I've had a lot of fun with it. As I said, 71 wins out of 100 games, and I played her probably, I wouldn't say exclusively, but mostly this week, especially just because I finally got the last 2 cards I needed, which was the Great Tithe and a second Cull. Having 2 Culls is nice. I think that really helps out a lot. 1 is sufficient, but if you can play 2 in a game, your opponents really feel it, and they don't like you for it. But that's it for me, guys. I hope that's been inspiring to you. I hope that's given you some things to consider. You don't have to have Janisha Kroll to enjoy the Sisters, and Kendel really is a thinker. She's a toolbox. You can pick and choose what you need, and I really enjoy that because it's not just put down power card, attack, buff troop. Kroll does that well, but Kendel plays a little bit more around what your opponent's playing, and you have a lot of endgame options. And I've had a lot of crazy endgame options with her, whether that is comboing with troops, using her attack, using Greater Destiny to increase my health and attack late game, especially against warlords like Kabanda or Angron who have to attack. Manifest Destiny is definitely one of those cards I would recommend considering. Like, if you're not sure about Vranting Armor, then put Manifest Destiny in. Vranting Armor serves its purpose every now and then. I don't regret it, but I would recommend not having 2 of those in your deck. So, all right. Well, I hope that's got you thinking about being silent and trying her out and giving her a go, because there are 114 warlords currently in the game, and they all deserve a little shine. So, till next time, guys, keep playing Legions, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.